Okay, we're on the first assessment. This is Math 119, Fall 2024. My last name is Bannon. Oops, let me get my pen out. The first name is Ron. And my email address is Bannon, that's BANNON, @essex.edu. All right, you could also use your phone number. My phone number is 973-877-1886. Again, we're hoping you read through the honor code, but I realize a lot of people are nervous and say, what's an honor code? Basically that you're going to take this assessment without any aid. That means you're not using a calculator, you're not using your cell phone, you're not using notes, and you're not looking at your neighbor's paper. All right, I'm going to sign it, and I'm going to start the exam. First question, it's a linear inequality, and it's compound. First thing I'd write down is the LCD, and I'm seeing 2, 3, and 4, and the LCD between 2, 3, and 4 is going to be the number 12. Then what do? I multiply all three sides by 12 then. I'll write that down. 12 times a half. And 12 is a positive number, so it has no effect on this inequality. Fairly easy to do. You get 6. You should realize that 3 goes into 3 once, goes into 12 4 times. You get 4x plus 4. Again, 4 goes into 12 3 times, and 3 times 3 is the number 9. The next thing I'll do is subtract 4 from all sides. Relatively simple. What do you get there? You get 2, you get 4x, and you get 5. The next thing I would do is divide all the sides by 4. So now I got my inequality solved. 2 divided by 4 is 1/2. 4 divided by 4 is, 1, so I get 1x, and then I get 5/4. All right. Now, just reading through this thing over here, something I do notice about this, they want me to graph it on a number line, and they want the interval notation. So let me do the first thing first. I'm going to graph it on a number line, and I'm going to put down the number I'm interested in, which is 1/2. Now, 1/2 is 2/4, so 5/4 is over here somewhere. Now, what's it going to be? All the numbers between 5/4 and 1/2, including 1/2. So this is one answer for it. They did say the graph, that's a graph of it. What's the interval look like? It looks like 1/2 included up to 5/4, and you're just not including the 5/4. All right, that's done. All right, next question, which is multiple choice, by the way. They say express the area of a rectangle. Well, the area of a rectangle is going to be the length times the width, all right? But they want me to express it as a function of the width, by the way. So they want the area of the rectangle as a function of its width. Right, so I know it's W, but I'm wondering what L is in terms of W. So I have to read it, and I'll read it to you, quite clearly, by the way. It says its width is, right? The width is, I'll put this over you. The width is 25%. 25% you can write as 25 over 100, or just simply 1/4. That's what 25% is, of its length. So what does it mean? It means the length is 4 times the width, all right? So I'll write this over here. The L is 4 times W. What does that give you? It gives you 4W squared. Now, one thing I know about multiple choice exams, I'm looking for that answer now, and if I see that answer, I'm glad to see that answer. If I don't, I have troubles, but I do see the answer. I'm going to select that answer right now. That's answer A, all right? Okay, next is a rational inequality, and I want to remind you to do a rational inequality. We're going to compare it with 0, and then we're going to do our sign analysis. So it's going to be 3x minus 5 over x plus 2 minus 2. I want to write this with a common denominator of x plus 2, by the way. I just subtracted 2 from both sides. X plus 2 over x plus 2 is conditionally 1, by the way. Now, this is going to be greater than or equal to 0. The next thing I would do is try to get one term. The bottom is x plus 2. Not so bad. What's the top going to be? Let me just write this down aside for you. It's 3x minus 5 minus 2x. I'm distributing this across and bearing in mind it's a negative sign over there. And then you get minus 4. So what is it going to give you? That's going to be x minus 9. Number line goes down now. And that number line, 2 numbers are going to get a number line. One of the numbers will be the number 9 because the top becomes 0 at 9. The other number would be minus 2. All right? Now, certainly looking at, I'm going to do some sign analysis over here. and I'm going to talk about numbers I'm choosing. If you chose the number 10, by the way, the top number would be positive, and the bottom number is positive. And that's certainly greater than 0, by the way, so I'll shade that in. The other thing I notice over here is that 9, it equals 0, so I'll shade that in. I'm going to take a number over here. I'm going to say a good number over here to choose would be 0. And if you plugged in 0, you get negative on top and positive on bottom, and that's negative overall, so I would not shade that in. Do not shade in -2 because that's a division by 0. But I do need to take a test point over here. I'll say -3. You get negative on top, and you get negative on bottom, which is positive overall. All right? They did say graph it. I want to point out where this is written for you. On a number line, we're doing that, and now I can put the interval notation down. But I do want to box this as being an answer. All right? The other answer is the intervals. What's going to be -infinity, up to -2, don't touch it, union, 9, off to infinity. Put a little box in that, and go to the next page, by the way. Now, certainly as you're doing an exam, you want to look back and make sure you've answered the question on that page, by the way. But it wasn't many questions there. I did the 3 questions, got them answered, by the way. All right, let's go to the next page. And the next page is going to be another question, and that's an absolute value inequality. It says basically solve the inequality. It doesn't look bad to me, and I'll tell you why it doesn't look bad. It's written in a nice way for me, but the 3 bothers me. I'm going to divide both sides by 3 to start off with. So you're going to get the absolute value of 4 minus 5x. And when you divide 12 by 3, you're going to get 4. And you're divided by a positive number, so it's no effect on inequality, by the way. The next thing I do is I understand what this inequality is saying to me. And it's saying the distance of this thing must be greater than 4 units from the origin, which means 4 minus 5x must be below -4. All right, that's one statement. And the other statement is, or the 4 minus 5x must be greater than 4 from the origin. Now, as you're doing these things over here, I say that, first step is to just write that down, by the way. Now I'm going to have to solve this thing over here. And certainly there's 2 inequalities to solve, and I'm going to solve, the first one I'm seeing over there, which is the 4 minus 5x less than -4. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to add 4 to both sides, which give me 8. I'm going to add 5x to both sides, which give me 5x over here. And then what do I get over here? Pretty easy. You divide both sides by 5 now. You get x, and then you get 8/5 over here. All right? I'm still going to connect this up with an or. And the other one, I'm going to do the same thing. Subtract 4 from both sides. I get 0, and add 5x to both sides. All right? So I subtracted 4 and added 5x. Divide both sides by 5, positive number, by the way, and x is below 0. All right? So I'm going to graph it first. And the first thing I put down the number 0. And what does it say x is? Reading it, it says x is less than 0. That means it's to the left of 0. The other thing it's saying to me is that the x is somehow compared to 8/5, by the way. That's a positive number. And what does it say about the x over there? It's greater than that number. All right, so it's my graph. I'm going to put the intervals down now. -infinity, up to 0, don't touch it, union, 8/5, off to infinity. All right, so I'm going to say that one's done. And, you know what? I just noticed, let me just make sure I'm doing this right, by the way. This is problem number 4. And I'm looking at my sheet, make sure you have the, because when I write exams, make sure I'm giving the right exam, by the way. Yep, I'm giving you the right exam, by the way. So -infinity up to 0, and then 8/5 to infinity. All right, let's do the next one, multiple choice question. And I have to select an answer, by the way. And so what I'm going to do is put a number line down. On the number line, I'm going to list all the zeros, by the way. So one of the zeros is when the first factor becomes 0, which is at 0. This one would be at 6. I'll put this over here. And then over here, again, if you need to, you can solve it. It's, 5y plus 3 equals 0. And that means 5y equals -3. Now, if you don't need to do that, don't do that, by the way. And then you get y equals, that would be -3/5. That's a negative number. It's over here somewhere. So what I'm going to do now is, take test points over here. And the first test point I probably would take would be, I don't know, maybe 7. All right? Let me just go through that with you. Positive, positive, and positive. That's definitely greater than 0, so I'm going to shade that in. The next point I would pick is the number 1. And let me go through that with you. Positive, positive. And, 1 minus 6 is a negative number, so that's negative. I'm not going to shade that in. And someone says, what are you going to do now? I need to shade in something, but I don't know what to do over here. I'll put a point down here, by the way. And I want to point out, -3/5 and 0, it might be difficult for you, but I don't think it's that difficult. I'm going to say -1/5. All right, you get positive. Now, if you did the -1/5, it's 5 times -1/5, which is -1 plus 3, which is a positive number. And then, minus 1/5 minus 6 is a negative number. I know that's negative, by the way, so that's not going to be shaded in. All right, let me keep going. Let's go over here. And I'm going to pick, I don't know, let's pick minus 1. All right, let's plug it in. What do you get? Positive, negative, and negative. And that's positive, which means it's greater than 0, so I'll shade that in. So I'm looking for an answer that looks like this over here. And again, you're hoping to see what you've got as an answer, by the way. So am I seeing that? I am. I'm seeing that right over here, and that's letter D. All right, let's go to the next question. The next question is a domain question. And the domain, this is an even root, by the way. It means that the radicand, which is x squared plus 7x, must be greater than or equal to 0. That's the domain of the problem. I need to solve this, factor out the x, quadratic inequality, relatively simple. Put a number line down. On the number line would go the zeros. Well, x becomes 0 at 0, and x plus 7 becomes 0 at minus 7. What do I do? Test it out. Certainly I know these things are going to give me a 0. I'll shade those in immediately. Now I'll take a test point over here like 1, plug it in. You get a positive times a positive, which is certainly greater than 0. I'll shade that in now. Right, I'll take a number over here like minus 1. What do you get? You get negative and a positive, which is negative, and negative numbers are not greater than 0. Take a number over here like minus 8, plug it in, you get negative times a negative, which is a positive, and positive numbers are greater than 0. So I know my domain, so I'll write the domain down for you. Domain is going to be from minus infinity up to minus 7, union, and then you get 0 to infinity. All right, put a little box in that. And then, certainly I want to go to the next page, but again, I want to make sure you understand that you probably should be looking at your pages as you go along, making sure that you've answered the questions, by the way. All right? So that question's been answered. Go to the next page, and the next page, you got number 7. We're getting close to the end. This one says solve it. It's another inequality, and you need to graph it, put a number line. Well, first thing I notice is quadratic inequality, so I'm going to set equal to 0. I'm going to subtract 9 from both sides, minus 5, greater than equal to 0. Factor it. Doesn't look like a bad factorization problem. That would be 5 and 1. I'm going to say plus 5 minus 1. And you may want to check that. It does give me x squared. 5 minus 1 is 4x, so I got that. And I do get the minus 5. Number line goes down. The number 1 goes on a number line because that's where the first factor becomes 0. And minus 5 goes on a number line. That's where the second factor becomes 0. I know these things are equal at minus 5 and equal to 0, by the way, and at 1. Because you plug them in, you get 0. I'm going to do some sign analysis over here. A number here to pick, after 1, I'm going to say 2 would be a good choice, by the way. All right? So when you plug in 2, you get positive times a positive, which is definitely a positive number. All right? I'm going to go over here. I'm going to pick minus 1. When you plug in minus 1, you get a negative times a positive, which is a negative number, and that's not greater than 0. What do you get over here? Pick another number, I don't know, like minus 10, for example. Plug it in, you get negative times a negative, which is a positive. That gets shaded in. All right? I want to point out they want the graph and they want the intervals. We got the graph. What does the interval look like? Minus infinity up to minus 5, union 1 to infinity. All right? So let's go to the next question. And the next question is multiple choice, by the way. Now, granted, for some students are saying, I don't know how to do that problem. And really, basically, I would say the first thing to do is read it. It says, what's the slope of the line which connects the center of the circle? Well, the first thing I got to say to myself, the center of the circle is relatively simple to put down, by the way. And what's that going to be? Well, let's write this down for you. The center of that circle is going to be 4 and minus 1. And then it says over here, the vertex of the parabola. And again, this was from the section, I think section 3 of your notes, by the way, where we introduced things that you should remember from Math 100. So I'm going to say, I know the formula for it. And again, you should know it as well, by the way. And that was certainly something we talked about in section 3 of the notes. What do you get there? Minus b, which would be minus a minus 6, which is 6, over twice a, which is 2 times 3 is 6. So I know the vertex is going to be 1. And now I got to figure out what the y value is. And what's the y value going to be? Well, just plugging it in, the y would equal 3 minus 6 plus 5. Well, that's going to give you 2. All right? Now, I got to get the slope between those 2 points. And the slope between those 2 points, and again, this is from section 3 of the notes, is going to be 2. This is the change in y. Minus a minus 1, which is 2 plus 1. And then 1 minus 4. What do you get over there? 3 over minus 3, which is equal to minus 1. All right, what's that answer? That is answer B. All right, okay, so let's do number 10. And what's number 10 going to be? This is an absolute value inequality. And when looking at it, it's a convenient one. It's one where the absolute value is being compared with 5, and it says it must be less than or equal to 5 units from the origin. Well, that's really easy to write down, by the way, that this thing is going to be between 5 and minus 5. The next thing I would do is multiply both sides by 2. You get minus 10, x minus 3, and over here you get 10. The next thing I would do is add 3 to all sides. That would give you minus 7. This would give you x, and that would give you 13. And I'm going to say they want it graphed. I'm going to put the graph down now, and that's going to be from minus 7 up to 13. They include those points. I'll shade that in, and then we're going to shade between that. That's one thing. And they want the intervals written down, which is minus 7 to 13. All right? So I'm going to say so far, we're almost close to the end, and now we're getting these things. And this comes from, I believe, the section 3 of the notes, by the way. And certainly I don't remember everything that we've covered in notes, but I want to point out this problem actually comes from your homework. And someone says, well, I don't do homework. How could I possibly know it came from homework? You wouldn't know that, by the way. But I want to warn you about this. You probably should say these questions are given to you. Pretty much we've seen them, every single question before, by the way. At least I hope you're so much familiar with it. So I'm going to claim over here, just looking at the picture. I got an idea looking at it. It's a picture of this thing over here. And just looking at it, it's not a bad looking picture. But I want to claim that something about this thing over here, and I'll get to the question in a moment, by the way, the domain of this thing is going to be when this thing is greater than or equal to 0, which is not so bad to do, by the way. Just factor it out. And I got a picture of this thing already, but I'll kind of put this down over here. Something about minus 3 and 3, by the way. And I will say that does produce a 0 in both cases. And again, sign analysis, you kind of look at it. If I got the picture, I could probably figure this out looking at the picture, by the way. You have to take a number after 3, like 4, and plug it in, it's positive. That gets shaded in. If you took a number between minus 3 and 3, like 0, it would turn out to be negative, and that's not greater than 0. A number below minus 3, like minus 4, plug it in, it would be positive. So when I'm looking at this thing over here, I'm going to say the graph stops here, then it starts up over here. All right? Okay, first things first. Let's read the questions now. It says, is the function even, odd, or neither? Well, I'm kind of looking at it, and I'm going to say it's odd looking at it. Now, if you want to do the test, I'll tell you what the test is going to be. Is f of x the same thing as minus f of minus x? Now, you don't have to look at the test. You're looking at the picture, by the way. It certainly looks odd to me, by the way. But the test would be, just plugging in. What do you get? Well, f of x is pretty easy. Write it down. And that's going to be this over here. And then what are you doing? You're taking the opposite of that function over there, evaluate at minus x, by the way. So minus, that would be minus x. Then you get the root, and pull this up a little bit. And you're going to get, well, when I square the minus x, it's going to be x squared minus 9. And these are the same things, by the way. So it certainly is odd by that test. What's the domain, by the way? Well, we just did that. It's minus infinity up to minus 3. Union, it touches the 3, by the way. 3 off to infinity. Put a little box in that too. What's the range notation? Well, I'm looking at it. The range looks like minus infinity. Again, there's some faith going on over here. It streams all the way up. It does touch 0, and then it starts up again at 0 and goes off to infinity. So I'm going to say the range of it is all the real numbers, by the way. Every real number is being returned. Where's the intervals where it's increasing? Well, again, it's increasing, if I looked at it like this, it's there increasing there, and it's increasing over here. What does that mean? As we move left to right, the graph is always moving up. So where's it moving up? From minus infinity up to minus 3, union 3 to infinity. All right, let's keep going. And the question is, the interval f is decreasing. Well, again, looking at it, it's never decreasing. So you can say none or it's never decreasing. I'm just going to say none. We are officially done with the exam. Now, again, if you took the exam and you got through it quickly, I'd go back over the exam, by the way, and make sure you've answered all the questions to your satisfaction, by the way. If there's some questions you don't understand, by the way, that really says that you need to go back and review the material that we're presenting to you. Thanks a lot for paying attention. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.